Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
This podcast is made possible through donations from listeners like you and our partners at Goalie Ashwa Gummies. You can find them at goalie.com. Use promo code the Show Up Dad Foundation to get 10% off your order. Zenderance Active Wellness and Sports Nutrition. Their products are designed to maximize your health. At Zenderance, they strive to support and have a positive impact on the wellness of every hardworking dad. Use my code the Show Up Dad and get 10% off your next purchase. For more info, go to www.zenderance.com. Tall Man Equipment, standing taller than the rest of the competition in lineman tools since 1952. Give them a follow at www.tallmanequipment.com. And last but not least, Adam Lane Smith. He is an attachment specialist who helps people to heal, connect, and build. Use my promo code SHOW, spelled S-H-O-W, for a 50% discount on his attachment bootcamp course. Thank you. Welcome to the Show Up Dad podcast, where we explore the joys and challenges of being a dad in today's world. I'm your host, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Colin Lavin, a devoted husband and father of 3 boys. Colin has been married for 19 years and is the business manager and financial secretary of IBEW Local 47. With his wealth of experience in both family and professional life, Colin is a perfect guest to share his insights and experiences on fatherhood. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the art of balancing work and family life, raising children through different stages, and navigating the complexities of modern fatherhood. So sit back, relax, and join us as we explore the joy, the challenges, and the many rewards of being a show-up dad. Glad to have you on here, brother.
I appreciate it, Dave. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely, man. Well, this topic is all about being a show-up dad, what you are, Colin. And I want to open up with you telling us a little about your journey into fatherhood and how did you feel when you first became a dad, if you don't mind?
Yeah, definitely. It was a surprise. Wasn't something we were ready for as a couple. We were still freshly dating and really embraced it. Kind of excited for the unknown, to raise a family and see what comes in the future.
Well, you've been married for 19 years, right? So how did you guys meet?
That's interesting. Yeah, we met at a friend's house party. She was a little younger. I think she was just turning 20 and I was just turning 25. And from there, we sparked up a relationship, started dating for a couple months, and ended up having a kid before we got married. Actually, at our wedding, I was holding Colin Jr., or we call him CJ, in the wedding photos. It was kind of cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's that's really awesome, man. With that being said, you have a father in the trade as well. How many brothers and sisters do you have, Colin?
I have 2 sisters and 1 brother. So I have an older sister, Erica. She's from one of my father's previous marriages. And then I have Katie, which is my younger sister, and Casey, my younger brother.
How was that growing up in a blended family like that? Did you see any difficulties in that, Colin, or anything like that?
Nothing early on. I mean, we were always together. Obviously, she would come for the summers, and then go back to her mom's house. And I think as we got into the adolescent age, I think if we all go through that phase and get selfish, we kind of broke off contact with Erica for a number of years. But we're all in touch now. But growing up, it was different being blended.
Yeah, because it provides a whole different dynamic, a whole different list of challenges, and it's hard. It's not only hard for the parents, I got to take my hats off to your mom, um, because it's kind of hard. You know what I mean? You got to be on the same page
Right.
with the way you raise them and everything. You know what I'm saying? And all the intricate dynamics that go along with having a blended family. So my hats off to
Right.
you
And
guys for
a little more
doing
to
that.
pay attention to, right?
Hmm.
A little more sensitivities around relationships and trying to keep things intact.
Hmm. As we're talking about your early childhood, Colin, I wanted to ask you about your father a little bit, Pat. Um,
Yeah.
how was that growing up? Like, I know he was a Marine and all these different cool things that he's done. You know what I mean? How was it growing up with him as a father?
It was kind of a crazy, story and origin.
Hmm.
Coming from Chicago, my father having his father in the trade, always going to family functions, always barbecues is my memory. Down in the basement where the men are, and then the women are upstairs cooking or out in the backyard. Um, but always family orientated and busy. Right, my dad
Mm.
played a lot of sports, a lot of softball, and worked a lot. He traveled a lot in the younger years, which eventually brought us out to California.
So you said he traveled a lot. How did you see that? Like, was it hard for you being a young kid and not understanding, or did he make it apparent that, hey, this is what I have to do to provide for you guys?
It,
Like, what was your thoughts looking back?
yeah, I mean, looking back, I can see where he did travel probably too much, but when he was around, I mean, we had kind of all the best things, right? The biggest Christmas tree, the biggest pumpkins we could possibly afford for Halloween. Um, Fourth of July's always had fireworks, and not the
Hmm.
little ones, right? Real big ones that explode in the air. So always made it the best of everything.
Hmm. So he compensated his absence with stuff, correct? Like you guys
Probably yes,
never had to lack or anything like that, which is really cool.
right.
You know?
Always had tangible stuff.
Yeah, I've seen both aspects. I've been in the position where I've had to make the decision, am I going to keep the lights on or put away the diapers? And I've also actually walked through the shoes where, like your father, my absence, because I was making a lot of money on the road, you know what I mean? I try to, I guess, for lack of better terms, buy my kids love, I guess, in a sense, not buying their love, but I was trying to pay for my
Sure,
absence, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
sure, and I think as providers, that's just one thing we learn, whether it's right or wrong. I think just society runs on money, and we fall in that trap of trying to buy the next best thing or a new toy for the kids. I mean, we see it everywhere. Not that it's always right, but that is something that makes it feel better.
Hmm. And it's crazy too, because like and I'll just give you a quick example. I just got this Super Box S3 Pro, whatever, right? I'm super excited about it because it's going to be an opportunity for us to have all the channels and movies. And I mean,
Right.
it's just, you know what I'm saying? And so I get this box and it's supposed to be for my kids and for family time. But like with everything, it's this thing where it's like, okay, don't touch it. Don't look at it. Only play it when I'm around. You know what I mean? It's like, it's
Yeah.
almost like you covet this thing that's supposed to be for your family. You know what I mean? And it's, my wife's the one that pointed it out to me. And I'm like, oh man, yeah, I'm doing the same thing that my dad used to do, because my father did the same thing. He bought stuff, really nice high end stuff, whether it be a John Deere tractor or whatever. But it was like, no, you guys can't use it. You're going to break it. But it's there. You know what I mean?
Right,
So,
right. Well, and that's, when we could buy stuff. I mean, there were plenty of years when food stamps and, help from the county is how we got by. Line work
mhm.
wasn't always rich back in the day, I can tell you that.
No, no. These kids trip out when I tell them that when I started, I was making $17 as a first step. And they're like,
Right.
what? I wouldn't get out of bed for 40. You know what I mean?
I, I think yeah, back shit when my dad took over, I think they were making probably 25, $28 an hour. as linemen and not getting nearly the hours they're getting today. And they were hungry back then, looking for work.
Oh, absolutely. That's when guys were traveling all over the big job, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he even at one point to help make money, I think he even sold real estate in the meantime.
Oh,
But
wow.
that's come a long way, you know. The work has really picked up.
Yeah, for sure. Now these guys are working what, like 80 to 90 hours, some of them a week.
Yeah, they are. And, you know, a lot of work coming in the future, a lot of growth in our industry when we talk about electrification of the world, really.
Hmm.
It's just going to take a lot of work and a lot of people.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important just to, I believe our mission is to make sure that the men in the families are ready for this type of
Right.
work. Because I think a lot of times people get into the line of trade, right? Because they see the money, they see that it's an opportunity to create a better life for their families, but they don't really think about not the consequences, but it would be the sacrifice that's going to be made. They're not handing that money out, right?
No, no, they're not. And you're not making it at home. You know what I mean?
No.
You're making that while you're out missing your family. And growing up, you know, being the kid of a lineman, you know, having those good things always came at a cost of my dad missing those soccer games or that Christmas, you know, and that
Hmm.
Thanksgiving. But that's where the, you know, money was to be made, is on those days.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I remember call outs, family around Thanksgiving, and they're calling me to go change out a transformer on the top of a mountain.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
and when you're hungry, you got to go. You know what I mean? That's how it works.
yeah, exactly. But I don't think people really understand the level of sacrifice that it takes to do the job and to make the money that we do. Um,
Right.
no, until you're put in those shoes, no one can really understand it. There is a lot of sacrifice. I've had past guests on here talk about how they missed their family, you know what I mean? But they knew that they were there for a job and they had to do it.
Well,
And
and
it's
it's
almost,
somewhat of a privilege, right? To have that
yes.
type of job and be able to serve the community in the way that we do and provide power and
Hmm.
be there to be the help.
Absolutely. It is. It's a privilege. Not everybody can be linemen, or electricians or
Yeah,
whatever the other trades there is. You know what I mean? I mean, it takes a certain breed of people for sure.
definitely.
Now we talked about the man behind this. We also got to talk about the wives that support these men. I mean, gosh, it's hard on them. I mean, I'm sure you saw with your mom the amount of extra stress she had to take on when your father was gone. What did you see growing up about that you remember?
Just, you know, extremely tight knit family and support
Hmm.
from you know, around our family, from aunts and uncles. But really, the wives at home are kind of the backbone of our family. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? When the men are out working, they're at home taking care of business, making sure everyone's fed and clothed, you know, and getting everything done. It's great support.
Yes, you definitely got to have that support for sure. If you don't, it's lonely. Unfortunately for me, we moved to a place where we weren't familiar with anybody, and I was in the
Right.
trade. We were about 5 hours away from my family, about an hour and a half away from her family, and my wife had to take care of a whole farm plus the kids,
Oh
everything
yeah.
while I was gone. So I really put a lot on her, and my hat has to go off to her because she put up with a lot while I was
Yeah,
gone. You know what I mean?
that's a lot to help out with that kind of dream, you know. I know we try to set ourselves up with our dreams and then we got to go make money and then we leave everyone at home to take care of it. So that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I've had a past guest come on and they talked about when your dream becomes your spouse's nightmare, it's time to reassess the dream, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and it's absolutely true because my dream, my aspiration, and the story, the narrative I told myself was, well, I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for you guys to have a better life. Meanwhile, I'm the one who's on the road, who's living a completely separate life, right? And
Right.
my wife's dealing with the kids, the animals, everything, and it wouldn't have been bad, but I didn't have a plan going in. Okay.
Right.
It was just, okay, this is what this trade calls for. And I'm willing to sacrifice and be on the road and deal with the long days, long hours, cold, all that stuff. You're going to have to deal with this. You know what I mean?
It's
And
oh,
she took over all my like extracurricular activities, all my hobbies, all my plants, all my, everything I was doing at the house. You know what I mean? And she never
right,
asked for that. You know what I mean?
right.
But she did
It's
it
it's
because she
almost
loved me.
no, exactly. And there's probably a period of time when you're going through life where it's all reactionary, right? Like I didn't
Mm-hmm.
plan to have kids or really plan to get married, but it was the right thing to do, and we dove into it, and it's been great. But there was a time there where it's all reactionary, and now we're trying to get to the stage where we can plan our future into retirement. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
interesting how that growth happens.
It is. And I like the way you said that reacting versus proactive, right? I think a lot of times we get caught in that reactive state where we're allowing stuff to happen, and as it unfolds, we're reacting to. We're always constantly behind the power curve versus having a plan and being like, okay, this is what we're gonna do if this happens, and basically have a plan for your life, a vision for your life, right? I think that's much more
Right.
important than just always living behind that power curve,
Definitely look at things differently now than I did, when I was 20 and knew everything. As
Oh
I've gotten
yeah.
older, I found out I don't know everything. My dad was probably smart back then.
That's crazy how hindsight 2020, we look back, it's like, oh, yeah, dad was probably right.
And I'm going through that same, growth curve with my teenage boys,
Hmm.
and I really can feel the frustration that my father had when I was at that age, because I'm just watching it all replay. It's kind of interesting.
So so we're talking about your teenage boys, right? What are some of the
Yeah.
biggest challenges you face in raising them, brother?
Uh, well, they're all three boys, and they're all different in the way they act,
Hmm.
um, and their personalities, which is kind of cool to watch them grow up. But trying to keep, the house in order, which
Hmm.
again, I was at work too, which was kind of nice. And my wife just had the chaos. Like growing up with three boys is tough, and it's three within 2.5 years, so they're really 1 year apart and a year and a half apart. So they're almost
Wow.
like three Irish triplets. But really try to teach them that they're brothers, and they can fuss and fight in the house, but when you go outside that house, this is a family, and you got to watch out for each other because the world can be very tough.
Mm. How do you instill that in them? Like, what is your key to that?
I, I think just communication and
Hmm.
trying to keep that relationship up.
Hmm.
I know, growing up, trying to do things on my own, me and my dad didn't always get along.
Hmm.
Probably for same of a lot of our listeners. And today, even me and some of my boys, we butt heads a little bit, but I try to let them do what they think they is right for them, and I try to support that at this point, right? They're 17, 18, and 20,
Hmm.
and I think with that support brings growth and learning versus us arguing and somewhat not talking for no reason. So I try to keep that open.
Yeah, definitely. I see a lot of times, Colin, that with our children or even with our spouse, for that matter, um, sometimes we recognize stuff in them that triggers us that we don't like. And what that
Right.
really is something we don't like within ourselves that we recognize. So whether it be an insecurity or whatever, it triggers us. So now we're being reactive to that, and we kind of take it personally instead of saying, okay, there's something there that I don't like. I do it myself, that let me try to change it in him so he doesn't have to go through what I had to go through. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
And
And I know that's what my dad, tried to do for me, right? Try to
mhm.
make life easier because he made mistakes that I didn't have to repeat, and so on down the line. And now we're at that same stage, which is it's kind of a fun stage, man, watching them come out of high school and become young adults.
Yeah, for sure, man. Making their own decisions and stuff like that. The other day when we were talking, you said something super interesting. You said that you got to look at your kids kind of like a thoroughbred.
Right.
And with the blinders, can you repeat that again? Because I thought that was just such a great analogy on
Yeah, I
how
mean,
you parent.
right. So something that I've kind of thought of and come up with is, rather than taking on, my boys head on and trying to, you know, maybe sometimes physically make them do something, or try to mentally mind game them into doing what we need them to do. I try to
Hmm.
stand next to them, right, like a horse or a thoroughbred with blinders, and I try to tug their cheek a little bit to try to lead them somewhere that's better, versus us arguing over what is better, and
Mm.
really trying to let them make that decision, and then supporting that decision versus us fighting over a decision, I think has worked best for us.
And I think that is such a great idea because everybody nowadays has their own process on disciplining their children, right? Some people like to paddle, whatever,
Yeah.
right? Um, but I think the approach that you're using is a training approach because a lot of people think disciplining is spanking your children, and it's not. It's not at all. Disciplining
No.
actually means training, you know, and a part of training comes with being consistent and trying to guide them like you have been into the direction that is best for them, right? And allowing them to fail and make their own decisions, but just guiding them. That's it. That's all it is. It's just training. That's true
Right.
discipline that works, you know?
And when it has to happen, like you said, letting them fail, and
Mm-hmm.
then letting them, dust off their knees and get back up and try again. Because with growth, or with failure comes growth, right?
Yeah.
And it's a necessary evil that has to happen. Even though as parents, we don't want to see our kids fail and fall, but really it has to happen, and it's tough to watch, but it's great when they come out of it.
Yeah. I think it's harder. I believe it's harder for our wives to watch the kids fail. You know, I know I could sit back and I'm like, all right, I could call it out. I'll see where they're going to go wrong, whatever. It's that father intuition, that we all have,
Right.
and it'll happen exactly the way you say. And sometimes my wife will want to help them. She wants to go to the rescue because that's a part of the way they were made to be the
Right.
nurturer, right? The loving parent,
Well, and that
and
was the role they played, right, for so many years
absolutely,
raising them. I mean, they've
yes,
they've been there at every stumble, and it's tough, I think, for them to watch, and even for us, but for them to then separate and become adults,
mm-hmm,
right? And they don't need you anymore, although they do need you as kids, but they really want to set out on their own. And I think the wives probably really feel lonely at that point as a
mm-hmm,
mother, because they just leave, and, and
mm-hmm,
now you're empty nesting, which is kind of where we're at. And it's interesting trying to get back into that, dating my wife,
mm-hmm.
because I want to get to know her again, as my wife, not as the mother of my child.
No, for sure. Yeah, definitely. When their whole life has been just wrapped up in the kids, the kids, the kids, the kids, you know what I mean? That's definitely hard. It is. Because they almost wrap their identity in just that, you know? Um,
Right.
it's kind of the same way I see it as a man, right? A man needs a purpose.
Right.
Okay. That's why a lot of guys, when they retire, they don't live too long after that, right? So that's why a lot
Right.
of guys don't want to retire because they still need to have a purpose. I had a real good friend of mine who talked about his dad, and he said his dad was like 80 years old, and his dad would always walk a half mile there and a half mile back to the AMPM to get the paper. And he's like, Dad, the paper gets delivered. He's like, you're missing the point, son. He's like, I
Right.
have to get up, get dressed, wash my face, and walk down there. I talk to the guy, I give him the money, and I walk back. That's what he lived for, you
Right.
know?
Getting out. I mean, like I said, purpose. And I
Yep.
think sometimes, just like moms can get wrapped up with their purpose with the children, we get wrapped up as fathers in the providing and in our
Mm-hmm.
identity at work. And sometimes we miss opportunities with our families for
Mm-hmm.
growth. And that can be a struggle.
I had a great conversation with an apprentice the other day, and he was asking, he's like, man, I don't feel comfortable at home. He's like, I feel more comfortable at work. I was like, well, think about it. I was like,
Yeah.
as men, we compartmentalize everything, right? We're like a waffle per se. We have these boxes. And while we're in those boxes, right, those are the boxes that we're in. Okay. Whether it be
Right.
work, working out, or whatever, or hobbies or whatever. Women are a lot different. They're like spaghetti where each one of their thought processes touches one another and everything can lead to something else. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But as men, we tend to spend more time in the boxes that we are comfortable with. So if we're feeling comfortable at work because we spend more time there, right? That's the
Right.
box we're going to tend to spend in. So if you're now in the box where you're at home with your family and you don't really spend time there, you're going to feel uncomfortable. Of course you are, right?
Yeah.
You're going to
Yeah.
want to get out of that because it's an uncomfortable feeling. And that's what I think a lot of guys who spend a lot of time on the road have to understand. You have to spend time in there. And how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, taking those small little steps, right, to get comfortable
Right.
back in that place. And it's going to take time. But with persistency, with consistency, it'll happen,
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, that's to me keeping that relationship open and communication, and
Mm-hmm.
not falling into that path of least resistance, right? Like electricity,
Yeah.
and go somewhere else. I mean that is part of the problem and the struggle is
Mm-hmm.
it becomes easy to ignore something.
Absolutely. I know I've talked to a couple other guys who talk about detachment. How do they would
Right.
always consistently detach their feelings and stuff like that. And one of the questions I brought up to him was like, okay, so you get comfortable with detaching all the time. Now what? Now you're comfortable with doing that and it's easier for you to do that. And now you're completely detached from your family. I was like, do you see
Right.
the problem with that? And they're like, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way. I was like, the only reason why I know this is because that's how I used to be able to leave my family. I would detach, I would turn very cold, and I would be so focus driven on getting my stuff packed and ready to leave for a month or however long I was going out of town, that I would completely forget about the relationship and saying goodbye and the hugs and the kisses and everything that goes into be sent off to go and do some work, right? It was
Right.
completely cold because I needed to detach from my family at that moment, you know, and it didn't yield good fruit at all for me. So,
Yeah. No, that doesn't. It's not a long sustainable plan. That's for sure.
mm-mm, mm-mm. Now I wanted to ask you, Colin, because you're super successful, dude. You're doing an amazing job as a business manager and the
I
financial
appreciate that.
secretary. We love what you're doing, dude. How do you balance your professional life with all the duties that you have with Local 47 and as a dad?
Yeah. So that can be a struggle, but has gotten a little easier as my kids have gotten older, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they've kind of gotten into their groove of growing up, which has kind of given me some freedom to do some more work. But really, we take time. Every year, we take a week to go camping and try to just reset. We always did that right before the kids went back to school.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of unplugged from the cell phones, go fishing. We normally would go up to Convict Lake up in
Mm-hmm.
the Mammoth area or even in the Mammoth campground areas and just try to get back in touch with the family
Mm-hmm.
and recenter ourselves, for the following year. And then again, just work on those relationships and communication and don't let little things bog you down or make it a reason not to reach out to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's helped out a lot. And in return, I get a lot of support, from my kids in helping out around the house, helping their mom out, and also just keeping the phone open. Since now
Mm-hmm.
they're running around, it's more phone call based, um, which is interesting.
Yeah. But it's good though that you allowed yourself to detach from all the distractions, going to the mountains and just being plugged in where you guys had to face each other and there is not a phone call coming in or anything like that, right? That I think that has a lot of value, don't you?
It does. And again, going back to being a provider and trying to buy big expensive toys, this is something
Hmm.
that's not expensive.
Yes.
Baiting a hook with a worm is something the kids always had fun with, and that's got to be one of the cheapest things we've ever done in terms of
Hmm.
providing for fun. And the memories that come out of that, I think, are priceless versus things that you can buy.
Absolutely, especially the conversations that you're having, like you said, when you're just baiting a worm and just sitting there and listening to the river or the creek or the pond or whatever it is out there, you know what I'm saying? The birds, and just really talking about life, with your father. I mean, that's pretty awesome,
Exactly.
brother.
Just kind of really exploring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, our relationship and just moving forward, talking about life and growth. So that's
Mm-hmm.
done wonders for us. Haven't gone up there this year. I think we're probably going to go maybe towards August again,
Mm-hmm.
when it probably cools down a little bit more.
So I remember some of the best memories I had was working with my dad. My dad is very, very strict, very militant. He wasn't in the military, but man, he lived like he was, and
Yeah, that's
cowboys.
an era. Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
era, right? That's just a generation that is going to be gone soon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that kept all their paperwork and had nice handwriting and cursive. It's something
Mm-hmm.
that we just don't see anymore being taught.
No, no, it definitely isn't. But man, those were some of the best memories I remember is just being with my dad out there in the boonies, chopping trees or whatever, just talking to him. You know what I mean? That's when
Yeah,
I
feeling
saw
free,
him
right?
being free, right? And just listening to him and talking and just asking him questions, just curious about life.
Yeah. Now, one of my fondest memories was doing Boy Scouts with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
When he would be home from working weeks on end, and back then they didn't have 24s or 32s. They worked,
Mm-hmm.
and he would come camping with us or hiking. Sometimes he'd have to pull up and take a nap in the middle of our hike, which was funny. So we would sit there and wait for a couple hours, but pick up, where we left off, and then catch up with the troop later. But those were always the fun moments, for me growing up.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure, man. What was the most important lesson that you learned as a father, Colin? What can you share with us?
I think probably just being humble on making mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't beat yourself up too much. What you don't know, you just don't know. And trying
Mm-hmm.
to be perfect can be tough, right? Because here you are, at the time of the child's birth, at least for my first one, you're holding this precious little package, and you're
Mm-hmm.
watching them breathe, and you're watching them squirm, and you're going to make all these promises to that child for the rest of his life, and just making sure you follow through with that promise, and don't beat yourself up too much over it. You're going to make mistakes. I know
Mm-hmm.
I have, but that's I think the biggest part that I looked at.
And I think that's so good to hear because I think a lot of fathers, man, they really, man, they everything we do as men is judged off how we perform, right? Especially if you're raised in a performance-based household like I was. So any type of failure, you look at it in a negative light, right? Instead of growing from it. And
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing is being able to give yourself that grace and be like, hey man, I make mistakes. I think that's
Yeah.
huge for sure.
I mean, we went when the kids were young. We went. Where did we go? We went to Alcatraz, and
Hmm.
we got all the way over there, packed all these bags, and about half an hour into the tour, we forgot the kids' formula. We had to leave to go back to the mainland because we didn't bring formula. But again, you just never can be too prepared. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, exactly. And just giving yourself that grace. I mean, I know a couple times we've been on these extravagant trips, with the family or whatever, and I want it to be so perfect. And sometimes I have to, my wife actually, thank God for her, because she sometimes reminds me, she's like, hey, man, it's okay. It's okay. You know what I mean? Because if it doesn't go a certain way or whatever I had planned in my head, I kind of freak out a little bit. just
Right.
being real. And it turns the whole day awful because as fathers, we have the ability to change the atmosphere, start working in a negative light like that and start being kind of negative and bugged. It totally has an effect on the whole entire family, you
It
know?
can. I mean, just a comment, or like you said, something doesn't work out. Now
Mm-hmm.
your plan was ruined, even though the reality is it really didn't change anything other
Right.
than your attitude towards your day. And that can really zap the fun out of everything. And just, like I said, being humble on that, trying not to beat yourself up is probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give.
What else do you do to stay connected now that they're older, right? And they're more developed, they have their own interests, their own passions. You said that you communicate on the phone, but how else do you stay connected with them now? Like, what do you try to do or
Try
strive to do?
try to be involved in maybe the hobbies they're in. So my
Okay.
oldest boy really likes to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Although he likes to work out by himself. Um, and he's going to college for kinesiology, which is like the art of working out,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to meet him in that space, right? So in the garage we have some weights and a little cage with a bench. So trying to take time to do a couple workouts with him. My other son, Seamus, my middle, he joined the Air Force. He's really big into cars, specifically JDM kind of cars,
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to take time to learn about that, right? Because he comes to me with all this information, and I'm more of a truck guy than a JDM kind of race car guy, but
Mm-hmm.
that's important to him and trying to understand, what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And for my youngest boy, he during COVID started working at a restaurant and really took to cooking,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to get him some utensils, um, knives and stuff like that, so he can play around in the kitchen at home.
Mm-hmm.
Is really, I think, trying to meet them where they're at, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And no, and I like that approach too, Colin, because you're not trying to change them at all. You're just trying to help them with their passions, right?
Right.
I think that's awesome that you're supporting them in those ways. You know, those are three different kids, three different passions, and you're able to recognize number one, what they like. You're able to support them in those ways, right? Because they're all different types of support that they
Right.
need there. And you're able to know what they like. That's the big important thing. I think a lot of parents right now, they don't even know what favorite color their kids have, and that's sad.
Right. Well, that I probably don't know the color. I'd have to guess at that, but I know some of their hobbies.
Yeah, their hobbies, right?
Fun, right? And well, and keeping them active. I think all
Hmm.
the boys are pretty active. They like going to the gym. They all got gym passes. It's also a nice, healthy hobby for everyone to have.
Yeah, for sure. And did you like working out yourself, or how did you get into that, or just through your
Yeah, I
father?
mean, I've always been athletic, right? Through high school,
Uh-huh.
I played sports, football, and ran track.
Hmm.
And getting out of high school, working in our jobs like we do, right? They're all physical. You
Hmm.
stay with some type of physicalness at work. But then as I've transitioned into this role in the office, I'm not carrying material anymore, walking miles a day on the job site.
Hmm.
I've really had to focus on, dedicating time to
Hmm.
make sure I'm hitting the gym at least 2 to 4 times a week. Um, because if I don't take time, it just won't happen. And I
Yeah.
think that helps with our mental state and stability, to work off some aggression and frustration. And then the ever changing, eating habits.
Hmm.
Trying to take time to eat something decent versus dashboard dining from a fast food place, which can be tough just because of maybe where you're at, throughout the day.
Yeah, for sure. You can't live on station sushi or right
Yeah,
away sushi,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. No, and it happens. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to make it less and less as time goes on, and again, right, instead of being
Yeah.
reactionary, try to prepare for these things. And always being strong in our faith. Um,
Mm.
we've always been faithful at different churches and try to raise our kids that way to try to also center when they're having a hard time. There's a place
Hmm.
to go and ask those questions.
Mm. Yeah, no, definitely. Especially now when there's so many things going on in the world and so many different types of questions that are popping up about faith, right? Um,
Right.
that's good to see that you're rooted in that and you're helping your kids develop their own way, pretty much. You know what I
Right.
mean? With that as
Right.
well, you know,
And
supporting
they've
them.
gone to summer camps over the years, Bible
Mhm.
studies throughout the weeks. And so it's there for them, right? If that's where they're going to be.
Yeah.
And it gives them direction.
How has that helped you in your hardest times, you know, really falling back into faith and stuff like that? Has it helped you or?
It has. It's big.
Mhm.
It's something again I've come to
Mhm.
for help and then gone away from as, I've lost my way and made
Mhm.
mistakes and then, as a rock you come back to it because it's solid and it's there.
Mhm.
And me and my wife in the last couple of years have really stepped up our game in the faith arena. And more recently really just became confirmed in the Catholic faith, which was quite a journey over the last 6 8 months for both
Mhm.
of us. Kind of interesting.
No, that is interesting. And you were raised Catholic, I believe, right?
We were, yes, my
Mhm.
parents and basically family was all Catholic.
Mhm.
When we moved out from Chicago, I was only about halfway done. Had just didn't finish confirmation.
Mhm.
So as we started down this path, it kind of got us a 2-for-1 special and got us in the door a little quicker. Got our marriage blessed with the Catholic Church, and then went on to finish and be confirmed. My wife did an RCIA class and was confirmed on Easter, and then I was confirmed about a month later.
Mhm. Mhm. No, I think faith is definitely got to be the biggest thing in your life, right? There's
A solid
certain
background.
things, absolutely, right? You have a house that's built on sand, it's going to fall. But if you have that house built on a solid foundation, right? Faith in
Right,
something, it's
right,
it's it's going to be a lot harder for it to fall. I firmly believe
definitely.
that, you know.
And it's
Uh,
it's a good moral compass, right? It keeps a lot of people in the know and moving forward. I think it's great.
Absolutely. And you said moral compass. I like that because that's one of the things that we preach all the time is as a father, our job is to teach our kids morals, values, personal responsibility, and self-control. That's what we need to teach our kids, you know what I mean? So
Right.
I like to see that morals is there as well, you know, and that's a big deal. I mean, because there's so much uncertainty in the world right now and so many people saying certain things, so much noise, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
as fathers, that's our job. We need to be able to teach them right and wrong, you know?
definitely. And I mean, growing up, my mom always told me to live like you had a video camera on your shoulder. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, today we do,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm sure you've seen the stories of people getting caught on the Ring camera, even a lot of our own workforce. A lot
Hmm.
of them have microphones. They can hear people down the street screaming and yelling or carrying on and getting in trouble. So there's cameras everywhere. I mean, you almost have to live that way already.
Exactly. Exactly. No, for sure. I mean, there's so many different cameras within the vehicles and stuff like that. I mean, stuff that people got away with even 10 years ago. That ain't gonna happen today, you know? And
No, the watchful eyes out there.
no, not at all. You know, but that's character too, though. You know, character I've heard it being
Right,
defined as doing the right thing when no one's watching, you know?
right, right.
And that's part of the stuff that we need to teach to our kids is that character, you know, because they watch us. I mean, if our words and our actions aren't congruent to what we're telling them, they're gonna know you're full of crap. You know what I mean? They're like, Dad doesn't even believe in this. He doesn't even live it. You know what I mean? So I think it's
And they watch from a young age. You know what I mean? They're
yes.
at that when they're babies, they mimic everything. They're a sponge, and
Mhm.
that's important that we are good role models. For them to watch.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's crazy too because think about it. So we're talking about kids, okay? In our industry, I like to think of our apprentices that we deal with as kids too. Really. I mean, I know they're
Right,
adults and I know they're men and this is a man's trade or a woman, for
right,
that matter. But dude, they look at us like little kids, and monkey see, monkey do. So if you're cutting corners, you're telling them, hey man, I know you're not supposed to do this, but I'm going to do this. I mean, we're really, really creating an atmosphere that is bad, you know?
Can be. And we've suffered the consequences of that over time. I mean, we've seen accidents and fatalities where people just don't need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And, trying to change that culture is also a passion of mine. Because as my kids get into this industry, if that's what they're going to do, and I'll probably have one, if not two of them in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
it's extremely important that, we keep our kids safe, because it could be your own that's out there, and we don't need to teach them something stupid. We've
Mm-hmm.
come too far, right, with incidents and accidents and creating rules, policies, and laws to protect everybody, and for people to just, shine them and break rules and get hurt is just ridiculous.
No, I agree. There's always a rule written for someone not following a rule, right?
Right. Well, that's the reason why it's called the Red Book, right?
Yep, exactly. I always tell my apprentices that a great example of that is one time that I was up in the air. I had hired on onto a utility, and we're just doing a simple pole swap, right? It had been raining for like 3 days. It never really rained in the Southwest like that, but it was just pouring, dude. And as a new hire on the utility, they would always send a utility hand with you because you're the contractor. We got to see what he
Right.
knows. So I flew up in the air with this guy. He was a brand new journeyman. I had probably like 4 or 5 years on him at the time, and we go up in the air, and I'm untying this phase, right? And he's like, "Oh, I was gonna put the blanket down. I was gonna put a rubber gut, put a blanket on
Right.
the arm." And he looks at me. He's like, "What are you gonna do?" I was like, "What do you mean? What am I gonna do? I'm gonna do it the way you're supposed to do it." And he's like, "Oh, here, let me show you something." So he flew the bucket to where he was in position to do the work. He unties it, and he throws the phase on the arm. Okay, the whole arm turns blue, and it goes straight to ground. Right, it's a Y system. It went straight to ground. We're lucky we didn't kill the foreman on the ground because he was about to staple a
Right.
pole, the pull tag on the new pole. And he looks up there
Right.
and he's like, "What are you idiots doing?" Right? And I was like, "Take me to the ground, dude." So we go to the ground, and the foreman looks at me because obviously I have more time in the trade than that guy is. So he right away looks at me, and I was like, and I explained to him, I was like, "This guy just untied the phase. He threw it on the arm." Well, he got really upset, and he pulled that young journeyman around the truck. And being that he was a utility hand, they wanted to talk like to each other, right? Instead of having the
Right.
contractor, which is me, there. So he starts talking to him, and he starts telling him, he's like, "Oh, what are you doing, bro?" He's like, "Oh, you know better than that." And he's like, "Oh, well, we always do it that way." Right. And that's what I'm going back to is monkey see, monkey do. They had been getting
Yeah.
away with doing that for so long because the conditions were dry, that as you do everything, that's how you do everything, right? So
Right.
that's what he thought. He thought he could do it, and not taking into account that it had been wet, it had been raining for 3 days. He thought he could do the same exact thing again, and it cost him. We had a circuit interruption and stuff like that. Luckily, we worked for the
Right.
utilities, so they covered it up and everything. But man, if that would have been a contractor, if that would have just been us as contractors, we would have been
Right.
smoked off that job. You know what I mean? It would have been a whole different story. Or someone could have gotten
Oh
very
yeah.
hurt. But just going to show
Right.
you that cutting corners, doing the proper procedures to cover up and work safely, and just doing it because someone else has done it that way all the time, it doesn't fly, man. It don't.
No, and it's just a tough time now. I mean, everything's at stake. Like you said, if
Mm-hmm.
if guys are messing up on the contract side, they just smoke everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And enough of those problems, and they'll smoke the whole yard. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? The utilities aren't messing around anymore, and there's millions and hundreds of millions of dollars at stake here. Probably in the
Mm-hmm.
billion range, and they ain't messing around. I can tell you that.
No, no, not at all. I wanted to ask you for your advice, what you can give to new dads who are just starting out on this journey, coming into the trade, just being a new father, bro. What kind of advice could you give these new dads?
Yeah, I mean, probably read as much as you can on
Mm-hmm.
all the books that you can find. Talk to your dad, talk to your friends that have kids,
Mm-hmm.
and then try to make something of your own. And like I said, don't beat yourself up too much. What you don't know, you don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
when you know better, you can do better. And really be a family unit
Mm-hmm.
for support. I think that helps out a lot in the long run as the family grows and changes in their needs, and
Uh-huh.
just being present and accountable to your family and your kids. I
Mm-hmm.
think is a huge part of being in the family.
Absolutely. I like that you said read. There's so much resources out there. We've teamed up with the National Father Initiative, and we have a tremendous amount of resources from work-life balance to being a new dad to everything. Everything's free. Just DM us and get with us, and we'll send it out to you. We'll pay for
Oh, that's
everything and just
great.
send it out
Yeah,
to you
that's
guys. So,
fantastic. That's a great
yeah,
resource.
absolutely. Because, like you said, we didn't have a blueprint. You know what I mean? And nowadays, there's no excuse. we there's stuff out there, right? So read. Take the opportunity. How do you think becoming a father really changed you as a person, brother?
Well, I think it really slowed me down,
Mm,
prior to, meeting what ended up being my future wife and having a child with her. I
hmm.
mean, I was kind of a wild man, right? Just out
Yeah.
running around, partying all the time, hanging out at different places that I probably shouldn't have been at. And going through the process of becoming a father and getting married, I mean, all of that kind of centered me in, this is now the time to start the family and try to do the right thing,
Hmm.
with my life and with the family. And even in that is a struggle, right? I mean, it's a
Yeah.
kind of trial by error. But again, if you got that moral compass going and you're really intentional in what you're doing, again, it's okay to make mistakes, but it's really how you come out of those mistakes and stand up and keep going is I think the key to life and fatherhood.
No, I like that. No, definitely. Yeah, just learning from those mistakes. I know I made a tremendous amount of mistakes, even with my
Right.
family and still continue to do so. So,
Sure.
but
Sure. Yeah.
you got to
We
learn
have
from them.
a lot of life left. So I know I'm not done with mistakes yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you feel particularly proud of or fulfilled in your experience as a dad? Like, what was your most proud moment?
So watching probably my oldest boy graduate high school is one
Hmm.
of the big ones. And each kid, I'm going to have their own moment, and
Yeah.
graduation is one of them. But my oldest son um, has a chromosome disorder called 2211 deletion, and he's got a number of issues. And really,
Hmm.
for someone who's kind of behind the ball in that realm, but can survive and make it through school,
Hmm.
um, is I think one of the biggest accomplishments in in my life with him. Watching my middle son uh, join the military while he was in high school, really
Hmm.
had a plan together of what he wants to do for his life, and he's working that plan, right?
Hmm.
Again, I thought a little young, a little early for him, but he knew what he was doing, and he's off and running. And then just watching my other son here getting ready to graduate, I think that's a huge accomplishment as a father to get them ready for the rest of their life as adults
Hmm.
and beyond, right? I mean, it doesn't stop there, but that's probably the biggest accomplishment for me.
No, I can't agree with you more. I don't, my daughter won't be graduating until another year, but man, I think about it, it goes by so quick, bro.
It
I
does.
mean, a blink of an eye and they're already ready. They're driving, they're going to
Right.
prom, they're thinking about their career, and it's just like, holy
And
smokes.
and when they stop asking for help, it's not that
Hmm.
they don't like us, right, as parents, but I think it shows how well we've raised them to where
Yes.
they can do things on their own 2 feet and and get by. Obviously, there's going to be struggles and hard times for them and for us in a relationship going forward, but knowing that that's the right thing to do and not baby them till they're 28, but letting them, kind of fly on their own for a little while. I think it's a good thing.
No, I agree with you, brother, and not personalizing it either, right? Not taking
Right.
offense when they don't reach out to you. I mean, I like that you put it in that
extremely tough.
perspective.
That's probably the toughest thing that we've, as a husband wife, has had to deal with watching them grow up is that they don't need us so much, and not personalizing it, that it's not about us. This is about them and their future.
No, I like that. No, that's definitely success right there. So if you guys are listening right now, man, don't personalize it. Just know that you've done a good job, and they're living their life, man. They're living their life, So no, that's awesome. I really like that you said that, Colin, for sure. What do you think some of the biggest misconceptions about fatherhood that you see in society today, bro?
Probably the role as the provider, and maybe what the provider means, and being that tough love of a provider probably doesn't need to be so tough. And fathers can be soft, and maybe for me, I didn't get to be that soft because I had all boys and I didn't have a daughter. But I think as you raise your kids, whether they're boys or girls, but just being more compassionate and softer, because we don't have to be such hard asses, even though that's kind of where we're at, especially in the classifications and jobs that we do. It's a real manly world out there, but not to fall in that trap.
Man, no, I like that because it's so easy to do. I think my wife used to tell me, you need to come out of lineman mode. You're not talking to lineman right now. And I was just extremely harsh, and it almost cost me. I mean, my little girl, I'm surprised I have the relationship that I do now, and it's through consistent work with her now, right? But man, for a long time right there, I had severed that relationship because I was just so harsh and so critical with her, treating her like an apprentice or whatever, you know what I mean? And nothing she can do was good enough. And you get caught in that mode. And I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you brought that up because it's devastating. It is for them.
And not playing the victim, right? I think
a
lot of the people around us and in the trade can play the victim or fall in the trap of being the victim. And the reality is life's not fair. Things aren't equal and even, and you got to get out there and get after it yourself and really, take a win for you and the family. It's not going to come on its own.
No, that was great advice, Colin. Well, thank you for being with us today and just sharing with all the dads out there and all our listeners on how they can show up for their family every day, Colin. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You're doing amazing things with Local 47. And I just want to thank you from our foundation to you for everything you do for the members. I mean, I have never been to a union local where they give and give and give back to not only their members, but the members' families. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate the support, Dave. This has been great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And is there any way that if our listeners want to get a hold of you, they can reach out to you, Colin, or anything like that? Or
yeah, I mean, I can. I'll give you my personal cell phone if that's what guys are looking for and they want to call me. Yeah, 951-746-4068, and give me a call. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about anything.
Absolutely. Well, once again, thank you. This is the Show Up Dad with Colin Lavin. Thank you.